What's going on YouTube? This is Jim Athanas, aka vypermajik, and I wanted to give you guys an update to my graphics card settings on GTA 5. Now, I did a video a couple months ago where I showed off how you could get some pretty impressive 60 frame a second gameplay using my old 560 Ti. I just recently upgraded and I picked up a PNY 970X card. I'll put a link in the description box below. There's a sale going on right now from Newegg, and I got it after rebate for about $285. And I love the card. Now, it is not the best card out there, I know that, and I'm only running one of them. I don't have any SLI mode or anything like that, but it actually handles most of what I throw at it. What I wanted in a GTA 5 experience was a 1080p 60 frame a second experience. That was what I wanted. And I was able to get it with this card, and I want to show you guys the settings I did to get there. Now, keep in mind that if you don't want to be a 60 frame per second snob like me, you don't have to be. You can run this game with almost everything completely maxed out at about 25 to 30 frames a second. You may have to tweak a few things to get that solid 30 frame a second experience. But for me, it was all about the fluidity of the world. I didn't care so much about every little individual texture. And that's not to say that I wanted it to look blurry by any means, but that was really my driving force in getting that. And I achieved it with this card, and I'm a very, very happy customer. What I wanted to do was show you guys a list of all the settings that I'm using, so when you're sitting down configuring your rig, you know, maybe you'll gain some knowledge from this. The last video I did seemed to be pretty helpful to everybody, so I got some really good feedback from everybody, so I thought I'd do it again. The one thing to note about this card is it does have the 4 gig VRAM. My old card only had 1, but you'll notice that I'm not even coming close to using the entire, allocated amount. And I find that this card doesn't seem to quote-unquote overclock as better as my other one did, because my other card I was running it at about 1800 megabyte of the allocated 1800 megabyte over the allocated over the 1 gig of what I had. This card, I'm not even using 75% of it. And I find that if I push it anymore, it starts to stutter from that 60 frame a second. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know if that's a difference in quality from a PNY branded card versus the other one I had, which was the it was a Gigabyte branded. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. Maybe it does. Regardless, I am running DirectX 11. I find that it does run a lot smoother than the DirectX 10 or 10.1. I am running it at full screen, obviously, 1080p. I did not mess with the MSAA. I found that, for the most part, all the games that I've tried, that really bricks your system. And I don't see a lot of visual gain for that. I'm talking just like not moving, looking at something. It may look slightly better, but when you start moving around, you're getting frame rates in the teens. I had to turn VSync on, and this may be an issue with my monitor. If I don't have the VSync on, I was getting a lot of tearing. And I know it's running pretty close to 60 frames a second. I've done the benchmark test. I'll run that in a minute and talk to you guys about that when I get there. I had to turn VSync on, though, otherwise it tore a lot. It probably has to do with my monitor sampling rate, or oversampling would be my best guess, but I don't have my monitor specs, so I really don't know. Everything else, as you can see, population density, variety, and distance scaling are all set to max. Texture qualities are mostly high or very high, 8x. The only thing I skimped on was the shadows and the grass quality. They look pretty good as they were now, and I felt that this is where you're going to start to see that number increase significantly if you start messing with it. So I left it off. I left the in-game field of effects off, and tessellation off as well. So leave that up for a second so you guys could look at it. One other thing I wanted to mention under the advanced graphics was I left the frame scaling mode off. But this is actually a really cool setting. I haven't seen this in any other game that I've played. So the frame scaling mode will actually, as you can see right now, if I have it at no frame scaling, my VRAM is at 2845. If I start bumping it up, it actually drops down, because what it does is it actually starts basically either shaving frames or making the frames look blurrier. It's a very weird effect. If you put it on all the way low, everybody looks very jagged. However, I will say that, as you can see, I mean, this is a severe case, but look at how close to 1 you can get. You can get to 0.834, and this I feel is a big deal in terms of fine-tuning your system. If you can live with, if you want higher settings or something, this is a great way where you can multiplier, and where you can start a multiplier in terms of your allocated VRAM. And I find that if more games did this, I think you really dial in your system and really tweak it out. Now, I can actually run this at about this, at about the 1.5 frame scaling mode. Things do look significantly better, but I find my frame rates start dropping pretty drastically from 60 frames a second to about 40 to 45 frames a second. And it is visually very jarring when you have this nice smooth frame rate and all of a sudden it just bogs down and then pops back up. But as you can see, if I start cranking it up all the way up to 2.5, I've almost completely maxed out what they feel my VRAM should be. But I don't play with this. I just leave it at 0. But that's just something, or 1 rather. I just wanted to point it out to you guys. So I'm going to jump into the game for a minute just so you can see. Now, something I want you guys to keep in mind is I am running this. I don't have any external software that I'm capturing everything on. I'm running this on OBS. That's what or Open Broadcast Software. That's what I'm recording my gameplay on right now. So there is going to be some slowdown from not only what I see, but how the game actually performs. But when I'm not running OBS, I do get 60 frames a second. OBS seems to be a big system hog in Windows 10. And I'm actually, when I run this, it's actually running right now at about 42 or 43 frames a second. You'll see that in a second when I actually turn on the, I'll actually run through the actual benchmark and you can see the numbers at the bottom. Again, this isn't really indicative of what I'm normally seeing, because normally I'm not recording, I'm just playing by myself. So if I had some external hardware rather to capture everything, you'd probably see the frame rate be a lot higher than what it should be, but just wanted to point that out for everyone, for all you naysayers thinking otherwise. But boy, this game runs silky smooth with this new card, and it's something I'm really impressed with. I think GTA, more than any game I've played, has done an amazing job of optimizing the game engine. And even my little 560 Ti was a great card, which was, you know, 5 or 6 generations old basically from what was out there, and it still ran great, and I was able to still get some amazing performance out of it. So this game definitely scales very well, and it's something that I'm really impressed with. So if you have an older system, just because you don't have a newer card, even if you have a 560, or even if you have an older card than what I had, you're still going to get some amazing performance out of it. And I don't see any reason why you couldn't get at a minimum a nice solid 30 frame a second experience out of it that still has enough detail where you don't feel like you're driving through, really bogged down. So just something to point out. I'm just going to go ahead and park it here. For some reason, you have to be off your vehicle when you run the frame rate test. I don't know why. So I'm going to run that for you here real briefly, and then I'll shut up and go back to playing. But again, I wanted to point out that because I'm running it with OBS running, you're going to see my frame rates drop to about 42 or 43 frames a second. But it's still a pretty solid experience. So the cool thing about this benchmark test is that I'll actually run everything in a day and night cycle. The camera will pan in and out. You'll get to see things close, far, different sorts of terrain, different sorts of textures, lighting. It's a really good cross-section of what you're going to experience in the game. And I think it gives you a very good feeling for what kind of performance you can expect to get out of your system when you start playing it. So again, you will see some of them actually do stay a little bit higher, but for the most part, they do drop down because OBS is just such a system hog. I still can't get over it. I'm looking at it, I seen it drop down to 38, 39 for a second. And for me, the rule of thumb is about 10%. I mean, everyone has a difference of opinion. That's like what looks beautiful to you. I mean, that's a very subjective question, isn't it? The thing to note is that, for me, it's about 10%, because what you don't want to have happen is a very smooth experience that suddenly starts to jar and then comes back. It'll really take you out of the overall experience of the game. And I think that's something worth noting. So this particular scene here with the drawbridge, this seems to be one of the most hogs in the game. You're seeing there's a lot of water effects going on. There's a lot of shadows, a lot of shading going on. And then especially in the chase scene with the airplane, this will give you a really good feeling for draw distance, pop-ins, shadows, and that sort of thing with the textures. But as far as the eye can see, I'm looking at this. I'm looking way out over in the mountains. You do see that things start to pop in, and I don't know how to fix that. It just seems to be the way the game was coded. And it's not popping in that it's not there, it's just getting a little more detailed. Look at the trees and the mountains, like by the base of that power pole. Look over to the right-hand side of the wing, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see shadows that weren't there that start to pop in. And I know there were some settings that I had turned down, and maybe turning those up would allow that to be a little bit smoother of an experience. But I have to say that I'm willing to live with that for the performance that I'm getting, which is a very, very solid experience. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to jump back into some gameplay, but I just wanted to show you guys that the 970X is a beast of a card. I highly recommend it if you're really into gaming. I know that the 980 came out, the TI just recently came out. Obviously, the Titan still seems to be kind of the VRAM king of the road. But in terms of overall performance on the 970, I've been very, very happy with it. It runs very, very smooth. And you could just see for yourself the amazing detail and the textures of the world. Obviously, it's starting to bog down pretty heavily here. I do promise this does run at 60 frames a second when I'm not running OBS. Anyways, I'm going to shut up for now. Thanks for watching. Please do me a favor. Comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about your experience with the 970 if you have one. Let me know how you've been, if there's any settings that you saw that I'm running before that really just look out of character. Is there some setting I'm missing that's going to make me have some amazing performance that I'm not aware of? And post some of your specs on your system and what you're running, because you know, there's still a lot of lessons to be learned out there. And when I looked online, I didn't really see a lot of tutorials in terms of here's my card, here's my settings, and obviously everybody's rig is significantly different. But you know, I think there's a lot of good ideas out there, and I definitely want to hear them all. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.